to some of those issues with both President Trump and I think with Biden. So he has been a more political figure than the Queen, but he's also said that he's not going to pursue that kind of potentially divisive issues.
Well, we're going to ask you to stand by, Andrew, as we take a look back now, or at Britain's now new monarchy, where we now have a king. It's been 70 years, and certainly no one has waited longer for that role than the Queen's oldest son, of course, King Charles now. He's lived his whole life under a microscope, his every move watched closely, and now he is finally making that move to the throne. And David Muir has the latest on the newest British monarch.
The Prince of Wales is king after the longest royal apprenticeship in history.
He'll be the best prepared monarch we've ever had, having served so long, that sort of tutelage under his mother.
Even to him, she was Your Majesty in public. But watch her face on her 92nd birthday.
Your Majesty, Mummy.
In 1952, when Charles was just 3, his mother became queen. His destiny was laid out before him. It was a difficult childhood for Charles. As a young queen, his mother put duty and service above all else.
One of the things he talks about is this memory of his mother coming to kiss him goodnight on the nursery floor, wearing the imperial state crown.
His mother broke with tradition, as we saw dramatized on The Crown.
Prince Charles was the first heir to the throne to be sent to school as opposed to being instructed by private tutors. He was sent away to the same school, I gather, that Prince Philip also attended, and he didn't have the easiest time of it at first.
In his 30s, the prince told Barbara Walters he struggled with certain subjects.
I think it's not too bad for people to know that the Prince of Wales can also fail in school, and they give him a failing grade.
Oh, yes. I failed my maths exam 3 times. I finally got it on the 4th attempt.
Prince of Wales became his title in 1969. But at the time, many knew him as a Playboy prince.
They tried to kind of create him as kind of a James Bond figure. He was referred to as Action Man, I think, in the 60s, as he flew planes or did helicopters or rode in jeeps or whatever he was doing.
In his early adulthood, he became a helicopter pilot, joined the Naval Air Squadron, and took command of a naval mine hunter.
And there were a long line of lovely young ladies who appeared to be potential spouses for him who did not make the final cut.
At 31, he proposed to his uncle's granddaughter, Amanda Knatchbull. She turned him down. He fell in love with Camilla Shand, but she married someone else while he was in the Navy.
Another 30 seconds, I think.
Finally, Lady Diana Spencer, the younger sister of a girl he had dated.
All of a sudden, this creature, who was so young and so fresh, had that beautiful smile and an ingratiating manner, suddenly we discovered that she was the apple of his eye, and before we knew it, they got engaged.
I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was. And, I mean, great fun, and bouncy and full of life and everything. And I don't know what you thought of me.
Pretty amazing.
And I suppose in love. Of course. Whatever in love means.
Everybody remembered that interview where they were asked if they were in love, and he said yes, whatever love is. And that tells you, I think, a little bit about maybe his upbringing, whatever love is from a grown man who's just gotten engaged. It's not the note you want to go out and pick your informal china pattern with.
It's emerged that the Prince of Wales, the night before his wedding, really wasn't at all sure whether he was in love with Diana, and was actually almost convinced that he wasn't.
On that day in July 1981, 750 million people all over the world tuned in.
So long as you both shall live.
I will.
It looked as though Cinderella had gotten her prince.
How are you enjoying married life? Highly recommend it.
I remember going to Australia with them. We were away for 6 weeks. And, I mean, that was the love tour. I mean, they were over each other like, you know, a rash. I mean, they used to look at each other like they wanted to rush off and rip the clothes off each other. They were that passionate. I mean, it was really, and very tactile, you know, touching.
A year later, an heir, and then a second son.
They're in very good form indeed. Bring us both an immense amount of happiness.
In this, their first interview, 1985 in Kensington Palace, music by William and Harry, and the royal couple still acting like newlyweds.
I suspect most husbands and wives find that they often have arguments.
But we don't.
No. But occasionally we do, because I mean, I go on longer sometimes.
Yes, but I'm faster.
There we are.
The thing that the British public will always be grateful for is the way she raised her sons, and the love and the affection and the touching and the caring that she imbued them with. They're never going to say whatever love is. They know what love is.
But as we all know, the fairy tale faded, and within 5 years it was clear the marriage had crumbled. Later, dueling interviews revealing that Camilla was still in the picture. Their foreign trips were now portraits of an unhappy relationship.
She was in touch with her feelings. If she was mad at her spouse, there were going to be indications of that in the photographs, and there were.
The funeral procession is on the south side of the park.
With Diana's sudden and tragic death, just a year after their divorce, Charles was a single parent of 2 shattered boys.
They are coping extraordinarily well, but obviously Diana's loss and death has been an enormous loss as far as they're concerned.
As the years passed, Charles slowly introducing the other woman, Camilla, to the public.
Yes, it might have been an affair that rocked the monarchy, but it's endured and resulted in an incredibly happy marriage.
Through it all, Charles did hundreds of royal engagements every year, which increased the Queen in her 90s. By 2016, attending 530 engagements at home and abroad in just 1 year. Duchess Kate on dating Prince William and meeting her future father-in-law.
I was quite nervous about meeting William's father, but no, he's very, very welcoming and very friendly. So yeah, it couldn't have gone easier really for me.
We've got a new member of our weather team tonight.
Watch this visit to the BBC studios in Scotland, noting some weather over the Queen's favourite home, Balmoral.
The potential for a few flurries over Balmoral. Who the hell wrote this script? As the afternoon goes on.
As Charles now prepares to ascend the throne, what does he do with it? Will it be more striking to us when it's held by a man that we've seen grow up as opposed to Queen Elizabeth? What are the qualities that the British monarchy represents? That's the question that Charles is going to now have to answer.
This man is an absolute gem, and we should put our hands together in this country we've got him, because he is, to my mind, he is the next king, no doubt about it. And people are saying, oh yeah, but he won't make a great king. Wait and see.
This grandfather, who has spent 7 decades waiting in the wings, finally will wear the crown.
It's still incredible to think there is a king now, after all of us have seen our entire lives. We have all known, so many of us, the majority of us, only Queen Elizabeth II. We did show you images earlier. The Queen, just a couple of days ago on Tuesday, met with the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. That meeting usually happens at Buckingham Palace, but because, no surprise, the mobility issues, she actually went, there it is, and met with the Queen there at her home in Balmoral in Scotland. Liz Truss just stepped out of 10 Downing a short time ago and made comments. We want you to take a listen to those now.
We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the world to celebrate her extraordinary lifetime of service. It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today, the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty, King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
And that was Prime Minister Liz Truss.
This is CTV. Don't blink.
In the headlines tonight, end of an era. Queen Elizabeth II, UK's longest-serving monarch, has died. Bodies of people who died in landslides in Kasese district have been buried. President Museveni commissions housing units that have been constructed by NSSF. And in sports, Bull FC prepares to face off with Future FC in Confederation Cup. A very good evening to you and welcome to CTV PM Edition with me, Melissa Mboha, and Isaac Luchamuzi on Sign Language. Tonight we start off on a sad note. The Queen Elizabeth, the world's longest-serving monarch, has died peacefully at Balmoral Castle this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Here are the details.
It's continuity between Britain's great past and its more middling presence and future.
Queen Elizabeth II was born Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary on April 21st, 1926, in London. Few expected her to assume the throne, as her father, Prince Albert, was the second son of King George V and considered a long shot for the crown himself.
When she was just 9 years old, her grandfather passed away and her uncle Edward became King Edward VIII. He was forced to make a decision between the love of his life, an American woman who was twice divorced, or the throne.
The earthquake that was the abdication of the Queen's uncle, Edward VIII, in December of 1936, changed her life, changed her family's lives radically. Her father became the king. She would become the Queen.
During World War II, Elizabeth was just 14 years old, but she was already making a public appearance to make a live radio broadcast to basically reassure the children and adults that everything was going to be okay.
Queen Elizabeth and her mother and father became an enormously important symbol for the British people. They were out after the bombings every day, touring, making sure everyone was all right. Queen Elizabeth and her sister, Margaret Rose, put on uniforms and worked in hospitals and other places. They rose to the occasion.
In 1947, Elizabeth married her distant cousin Philip Mountbatten and began a family with the birth of Prince Charles in 1948 and then Princess Anne in 1950.
On February 6, 1952, the Queen's father died, and she automatically became Queen.
One of the very first things that Queen Elizabeth did differently was to televise her coronation in 1953. It's the first time that had ever been done. And she actually began having weekly meetings with the Prime Minister, and that actually continues to this day.
In all, Queen Elizabeth II had 4 children: Prince Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward.
It wasn't all red carpets and roses for the Queen. Her security was very much uppermost in people's mind. In 1979, Lord Mountbatten, a relative, was murdered by an IRA bomb. In 1982, shots were fired at the Queen as she rode on horseback at the Trooping the Color. They were blanks, but nobody knew it at the time. A man broke into her bedroom and sat on her bed, smoking, with his hand bleeding.
The early 1980s also brought the marriage of her son, Prince Charles, to Lady Diana Spencer, who soon gave the Queen additional heirs to the throne, with Prince William's birth in 1982 and Prince Harry's in 1984.
1992 was a rather scandalous year, and Queen Elizabeth referred to it often as Annus Horribilis. It was the year that Charles and Andrew separated from their wives, and Anne had actually divorced.
When Diana died in 1997, the Queen's image took a hit because she didn't say anything for what seemed like an unconscionably long time to the British public.
In 2012, Queen Elizabeth II celebrates her Diamond Jubilee, marking 60 years of rule as Queen. Only Queen Victoria ruled for a longer period.
I think the Queen will be regarded by history as a steady hand on an unsteady tiller. During her reign, the Commonwealth changed substantially, people's attitude toward the royals changed substantially, and she kept faith and kept it on a steady footing.
The end of an era indeed. Moving on, 16 people who were killed in the landslides in Kasese district yesterday morning have today been laid to rest. The landslides, which came after a heavy downpour, destroyed homes in Kasika village in Rukoki sub-county, killed people and destroyed property.
Rescue efforts have continued to take place in the areas that were hit by landslides in Kasese district. Following the dismissal of 16 people, different families, friends and relatives of the deceased gathered to lay them to rest. 10 of the people who died were buried today in Kigoro 1 village, 3 in Iwanda Chanya Town Council, and the remaining 3 were buried in Milami 1 village in Kalambi Sub-County in Bukonjo West constituency. According to Bushongola South MP Gideon Tembo Mujungu, government has pledged to help the families that lost dear ones and will also foot the medical bills for those nursing wounds.
President Museveni, our president and chairman of the NRM, has directed that government pays 5 million per each person who has died and 1 million for each person who is hospitalized. We are working on the data to get clearly the names of the people who are deceased, the people hospitalized.
According to Godfrey Bwambale, government should quickly come to their rescue since they have been left with nothing.
No, we didn't get anything where we slept because our houses always were swept with the rain. We didn't get even anything to eat. So how has government helped? By then, the government has not yet given us anything.
Dr. Samson Kalabio, who is in charge of St. Paul's Health Center, says the 5 patients who were admitted are responding well to treatment.
One gentleman, who is I think the father of the rest, had very severe injury of the chest, and we referred him to Kilembe Mines Hospital. But the rest of the children, who are 5, we stabilized them, except one, who is a 13-year-old female, who sustained major injuries of the cervical area and is due for X-ray.
The Uganda National Meteorological Authority recently warned the Rwenzori sub-region, which takes charge of the districts of Kasese, Bundibujo, Ntoroko, Kabarore and Bunyangabo, is recently in the middle of the seasonal rainfall that they said will continue until mid of late November. CTV, PM Edition.
No Nyege Nyege. The Speaker of Parliament, Anita Annette Among, has maintained her position that the Nyege Nyege festival will not take place as earlier communicated. According to the Speaker, Parliament will not condone immoral activities that take place during Nyege Nyege. Take a look.
For the 3rd day in a row, Parliament has continued to debate the Nyege Nyege 2022 festival, which is scheduled to take place next week in Itanda Falls in Jinja City. On Tuesday, the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, announced that Parliament had cancelled the much-anticipated festival after questions of morality were raised by members of Parliament. However, yesterday morning, the Prime Minister, who met the organizers of the festival, revealed that Nyege Nyege will take place, but with caution, something which angered the Speaker of Parliament.
A number of resolutions have been reached. One of them is to harmonize who is the arm of Parliament, to see that this event takes place with guidelines that will restrict those that are coming to celebrate in the event to behave. We have tasked the Ministry of Ethics and Integrity and that of National Guidance to come up with guidelines.
Today, during the parliamentary plenary sessions, Speaker Among reiterated that decision of Parliament is to cancel the festival, the Nyege Nyege, ever since it was raised by the Toro woman MP Sarah Opendi, who called it immoral. Opendi today asked Parliament to completely ban the event.
And also the adverts going on, Right Honourable Speaker. We cannot have people drinking the whole day, the whole night, Right Honourable Speaker, in this country as if they have no work to do.
The decision of this Parliament on Nyege Nyege stands. Number 3, the executive should do its part.
The Bojeli Municipality MP Asman Basalirwa, in his submission, asked the official position of government on Nyege Nyege. According to the Minister of ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Chris Baliomusi, Ugandans have a right to enjoy their freedom, so they should let the festival take place.
And we did agree that there is a need for strong regulation, regulation being a function of the executive. And we continue to consult, and we agreed the executive will handle this matter.
Responsibility of executing it becomes an executive function. That's why it's important for us to know their position as executive. Are they pro-Nyege Nyege or festivals of that nature, or they are not pro them? We need to understand it and let them put it on table.
Other legislators weighed on the issue of Nyege Nyege.
Within their purview, within their mandate to okay or not to, but they should listen to the voice of the people, which is Parliament. That Nyege Nyege is an alien concept. The things that happen there, we are told, are things that we don't want our sons and daughters, young sons and daughters, to be engaged in.
To tell us that you are organizing a scene, as we hear, that people come, you just choose whoever is beautiful, whoever has smiled well, they dress enticingly so that you can admire and pick up anyone. Those are the concerns we have. A country which has a ministry to do with ethics and gender.
The Nyege Nyege debate continued to remain contentious, with many activists coming out to condemn the decision of Parliament. The organizers of Nyege Nyege say that they have invested over 700 million shillings in the event and they do not want all that to go to waste.
Together, the organizers and the management of Itanda Falls, we've already invested more than 700 million shillings into infrastructure development at the venue, creating it as a key tourism destination.
Sarah Nakandi for CTV PM Edition.
Thank you, Sarah, for that report. Quite an unfortunate incident, especially for those who had already purchased their tickets. But moving on, savers with the National Social Security Fund are set to have double-digit profits added into their savings in a near future. Now, this follows the commissioning of a multi-billion housing project in Lubowa, Wakiso district. 1.7 trillion shillings of the savers' money was invested in the housing project, which is set to return billions to savers. Ramson Muhaire has the details.
The National Social Security Fund is a quasi-government agency responsible for the collection, safekeeping, responsible investment and distribution of retirement funds from employees of the private sector in Uganda who are not covered by the government retirement scheme. As part of maximizing the profits from the fund, NSSF has today showcased their housing projects. These houses sit on 60 acres of the 600 acres of land that belongs to NSSF. Today, President Museveni inspected the project and commissioned the housing projects. According to President Yoweri Museveni, court injunctions on such projects should be halted.
Injunction, stop. That's very disruptive. If you have got a case, let me continue with my project. If you win in the future, I can compensate you when the project is already finished.
The closed 400 houses form the first phase of the planned 2,750 houses that will be constructed by NSSF across the country. The project has seen NSSF inject 1.2 trillion shillings of the workers' savings.
In our accounting records, we have been running it as a work in progress, but now that it's been launched and it's completed, we're going to begin selling, and then we'll begin to make a profit, a return for our members. And the returns are in double digits, and we believe that this is a good opportunity for us to be able to showcase to the world what NSSF can do.
The project comes nearly 20 years after NSSF secured its land. Proceeds from the sales are meant to see NSSF savers' profits increased, with each unit going for between $150,000 to $800,000.
Our plan is to have other lower and affordable housing in places like Chanja, where we have a 60% completion rate. We also have a big project coming up in Temangalo of about 5,000 units. That one is at about 30% completed, and we'll also be calling you for that launch. Those houses will be in the region of less than $40,000.
The project has villas, townhouses, apartments and bungalows. Each house has water, electricity and internet, among others. Ramson Muhire, CTV PM Edition.
PM Edition returns shortly with more stories after the break.